All right, we will call the Hudsonville Public Schools Board of Education work session for June 19th to order. Approval of our agenda.
So
Moved by Andrew,
support.
support from Ken. All in favor say yes. Opposed, same sign. All right, our agenda is approved. First up is recognition of visitors and hearing of people present. Robin.
Gwen Snowy.
I appreciate your decision to move Jar Hill to the public library. Because of the nationwide efforts to embed sexually explicit adult books in K-12 schools, I have a few questions I'd like you to consider as you discuss book policy tonight. In early 2022, Mr. Beal sent a letter to the parents stating that the review committee had decided that Half of the Yellow Sun would be removed from the book club but kept in the library. This was satisfactory to the parent, but within the next couple weeks, by chance, the parent found out that the book was retained in the classroom library. It took going through the appeal process to finally place Half of the Yellow Sun in the actual library. My question is there board oversight to assure that there's follow through on the decisions? Secondly, do our book club permission slips directly reveal sexual content? As an example, please check the book club permission slip for The Kite Runner. Does it mention the homosexual rape of a young boy, which threads through the entire novel? And does it reveal the child prostitution contained in the story? Facts like these need to be directly revealed on the permission slip in order for parents to be fully informed. If they're not revealed, then HPS is not being honest about fully supporting the parents' right to guide their parents' or their child's book choices. We've been informed that there are many adult books in our library. Is the adult fiction designation a common library designation noted on the adult books on our Alexandria listings? This would be a great help to parents. And have you worked on establishing guidelines for what can come into our schools? We've talked about it several times, but has it ever been done? Our current book policy revolves around a book review process established by the National Council of the Teachers of English. They believe there is no such thing as adult content. They also give tips on their website about how to discourage parents from bringing book challenges. The book issue is one of the defining markers of the integrity of Hudsonville Public Schools. Your main responsibility is not to the NCTE and not to the American Library Association or even to our teachers. Your responsibility is to the parents and students of Hudsonville, both current and future. Please take the time to establish comprehensive book policy for Hudsonville Public Schools. Thank you.
Next up, we go to our discussion items. First one, graduation alliance.
Thank you. So we talked about this a while back, talking about what courses can be taken for students outside of our normal curriculum. I'm going to try to start to come up here. I don't know. Craig, is it? Timer's up. Timer works.
Great. I haven't had that kind of introduction yet.
That introduction, I'll turn over to Kate Chris. Graduation line.
I just wanted to take a few moments to share some information about the Graduation Alliance. It is a platform of online courses that we are currently using for a couple students in our summer school program. And we plan to use it for our alternative education program in this coming school year. Some of the reasons for that include wanting to have a certified teacher for the courses that these students will be taking. In our current setup, we've been using our high school teachers and trying to schedule students for credit recovery hours, and that's very difficult. There was a recent law change that required a teacher to be certified in each content area in order for them to legally award credit to our students.
Can I just clarify?
Yeah.
So we've always had certified teachers with our students. I just really want to make sure that you know
Well,
that.
yeah,
Yeah, but what it is that it used to be that we have a certified teacher, then with a mentor teacher that was endorsed in that content area. But the pupil accounting laws during COVID switched, and so now the main teacher has to be a certified or endorsed in that area. So we've done a lot of really great workarounds, but this is a lot better. So sorry.
thank you for clarifying.
Yeah.
What we hope to accomplish is to, in the summer school program, test these courses out and get a better sense of how they are and how well they work. And then make a determination about whether or not they're good enough or of high enough quality to continue to use. And ultimately, we would want them to be approved as part of our course approval that you would be a part of. So really, we just kind of wanted to give you a heads up now, and then continue to share our findings as we work towards full approval.
There are several opportunities to access curriculum that we'd like to use, whether it's online, whether it's in person. You see the in-person curriculum, but you approve it on a regular basis. Online is evolving. What is the best avenue for our kids? And so this is an opportunity for them to use summer schools, kind of work through the Grad Alliance curriculum, basically to make sure it works for our kids, so that moving into an alternative situation next year, it's aligned and the board can then approve that for the time being before we get too far down the road.
Yeah, and I would add too that we still will have Hudsonville teachers and staff serving as mentors for these students. So we hope to keep them in the Hudsonville community while still utilizing the courses and services that they provide. We feel that's important.
So we were using Kellogg'sville. We determined that was not the right fit for us for a number of reasons. And now we're shifting over to Graduation Alliance, and we're gonna pilot that or try it out this summer. And then if we like it, then we go forward. It becomes not just a summer alternative, right? It becomes an alternative education year-round, an alternative education opportunity for us, right? Am I getting that?
Yes. I would clarify in Kellogg'sville, we still have that option open to some students. They're only offering their program for grades 6 through 12. At this point, we have one middle school student signed up for next year, and that's it. But our hope is for this alternative school pilot, which we'll speak to more on the next agenda item, I believe, to utilize the Grad Alliance, and then as we solidify the plans for that alternative program, work out how that looks and what the staffing will look like. And try to improve upon what we've learned so far.
So say this in the future, when we have a course approval, but wanted to just share with you kind of where we are along this process to find the right fit. As you'll hear when we get through item number 4, we get a better understanding of the impact of not every kid being able to fit with the current structure we have, and how do we maybe look at alternate ways to educate our kids and alternate environments, which is one of the challenges we have.
Any questions? Thank you.
Thanks, Greg.
Thanks, Greg. I'm just gonna sit here for the next part.
Well,
Next.
it's 2 more, but you can stay here the whole time.
Yes. Next up, we have our 5-6 review and road purchases.
Yeah, so we, as you know, in the new 5-6 building, there's a big room in that building. It's been called multiple things as we've gone through, but it's a room that has all the books because there is technically not a media center. There's multiple media centers in that book because of the layout of the building. So now we're to the point where we're going to ask the board for the purchasing of a bunch of books. In terms of Pat, Melanie, and Nicole, and talk a little bit about the process that's used to get to filling that the books.
All my stuff and you cleaned up. So Nicole has worked really, really hard. I had no idea before this how hard it was to furnish a new library. So Melody and Nicole and Amy Taylor our assistant superintendent for curriculum have, they had to figure out space things, figure out this new, because it's got sliding, the shelves slide, and all the other things Melanie's been doing this year. She's been our 5-6 building principal. She's been doing staffing, she's been doing curriculum, she's been leading so many things, scheduling, electives, new music, just so many things this year. But one of the things that she and Nicole have worked a lot on is the right number of books for this read room. So, but Nicole also went out to find the best pricing, because a lot of times when we buy curriculum, we go with what we have done, use the same sources. And so Mackin is the recommended vendor. This will, if approved, this will be a general fund purchase, and they're not as widely used in West Michigan, but they do have a great reputation. So she's checked with her colleagues, and I'll butcher this, but she is very confident that through working with her colleagues, that we're not just getting a cheaper vendor, we're getting a vendor that'll stand behind their work and provide excellent service. And the difference there, if you look at the quote summary, is $7.51 each versus $18.69 each, for a total of $9,000. So I am not going to say any more other than this, if approved, it'll come out of the 2023-24 budget. I didn't think we would be getting at this inexpensively. When we first started looking at this, we were thinking it would be $200,000, some of the initial quotes, just for the initial collection. So hats off to Nicole and her work, and Melanie and supporting the work. So
Just to clarify, it's $17.51 a book for $92,464.
anything else?
I will answer questions.
Oh, okay.
Questions, I don't.
How do you start? How do you know how many books you have?
So there's industry standards that are recommended at different, like elementary, middle school, high school, for the number of books per student. So we base on those industry standards, and that was common. We got letters of justification from the different vendors we looked at, where they before they cultivated collections for us, they said, this is how many books we recommend based on the spacing you have, the number of students in your building, and your goals for the collection. And then this is about like the average price per book. So they first started out with a letter of justification. Then when we decided to move forward with pursuing a more formal quote from each vendor, we set the parameters for what we wanted to include in our collection. So we set parameters around like publication year. We looked for things published within the last certain number of years. We could set for a certain number of positive editorial or professional reviews. In a 5-6 collection, it's really nice because you have a small range of student ages that you're serving, so that makes it easy to keep things in the age relevant and within the recommended age resources. Does that help?
So the number here, 5,280 books, that was a recommendation by them, or that was?
That was a recommendation by them. It is a combination of a recommendation by them and the linear feet of shelving that we have.
So how many books do you think are in this room? I have no idea.
I could pull it up, but I couldn't tell you off the top of my head.
I'm just trying to
So you're
figure
here to
out.
answer questions.
Right.
Visualize the number.
Answer questions. No, that's not right.
Yeah, no.
a very dense shelving. So
Just curious how many.
And the high school collection is actually within the library catalog in one, so I could only tell you
Sure.
what's
Sure.
everywhere.
I'm trying to envision it, Nicole. If I remember from like the blueprints, it seemed like it was a book vault. It's not a big room like this where people can go and leisurely stroll and look for a book, right?
So I'll let Melanie speak a little bit more to that.
I'm just trying to envision, how do students pick these books?
So we're gonna do a little trial and error because we have to test it out. We are actually, so I've asked, there are no other schools that have it exactly like our setup. We're the first one. there's gonna be more schools that will have it similar to ours, just because of space and building and utilizing different spaces. So it's on this track system and they slide out. So we are going to trial kids potentially coming in and maybe seeing, we haven't decided yet, but it could be by genre, or we could just do normal, how they're shelved in a normal library, which could be a little tricky. And then also maybe having them check out books online, but there's something to say for kids actually seeing books in person when checking them out. So we're gonna try a little bit of both.
So just some history behind it also. Byron Center has something similar,
Mhm.
a room that has all the books, because there's multiple places for kids to read, as opposed to just the media center. If you go to your doctor's office, where you look behind the counter and they have all the medical records around these big rolling, or you go to the music room, they have all the shelving with the music that they can scroll back and forth. It could be very similar to saying, hey, we're doing a science project on a certain topic, and when they go in there, the media area that's there might say, okay, we're gonna move these two shelves this way because these are the books that you're gonna focus on. I'm looking for them here. So it's a system to hold a lot of books in there, knowing that there's multiple areas in that building to be treated as a media center.
We'll have some great opportunities to get creative.
We're just excited that teachers don't have to check out the library for a full day, keeping other kids from going to the library and getting books, because there are so many other spaces. Because that does minimize how many people can actually go into a library, because you shut it down for a day because so-and-so's class is gonna be there all day long. So it gives us lots of opportunities to go and check out books.
And does the vendor recommend all the different genres, or do we request the different?
So they ask us questions around what are the goals of our collection, like are we looking for do we want to have kids be able to do a lot of research? Do we want to mostly support their independent reading? And then they provide a cultivated collection, it has thousands of items. So I have a list and I can go through that list and determine. So they ask, do you want graphic novels? Do you want biography? Do you have any, they went through state curriculum standards and asked do you need to support this area? Do you need to support that area? So they give a really balanced collection. And then also once they send us the curated list, I can go through that list through each item in the list. And so there's some I was this might not be a great fit, so I'll set that one aside and then I can add something else.
Do they do anything with, and I think I know the answer, but I'll just ask the question and you can expand on it, with ebooks and with maintenance of the collection? Or is this with Mackin, it's a one-time, we come in, we work with you to select the books you want based on goals and upsize, and then we stock the library, and then anything beyond that, ebooks or maintenance of the collection is outside of.
They do have availability of ebooks. We did not put any in this collection at this time. As far as maintaining the collection, on some of the ones that have their binding, they have a guarantee where we can send it back and they'll replace it.
No, what I
fix
mean-
it, but
No, what I'm thinking, sorry Nicole, is
No.
you've talked before about the did you call it winnowing process? What did you call that?
cataloging and processing.
Well, no, you talked about when a book isn't read.
Meeting.
Weeding, thank you. That weeding process, if we go, okay, we're going through that process and we're weeding out the books we want. Do we work with them to refill that, or how does that?
When we weed, we refill depending on the needs. So we don't necessarily, we can use any vendor to do
We
that.
can just do anything.
Right.
Okay.
There could very well be a book that we purchase that's not signed out for 15 years.
Yeah.
And we have to weed it.
Yeah,
We
no, I
know
understand.
that's
No, you explained that very well
hundreds
last
of
time. I just got
times.
the wrong word. And I was just curious as to whether or not, how that worked with Mackin or with anybody once the library staff. So
Usually when weeding is the first step of a process, and then we identify areas to develop our collection further, when we weed.
Yeah.
Did we weed because we don't need these topics or they're not relevant anymore, and what topics are relevant? So that's the work that we do as professionals with the support from our vendors.
and again, you can work with a variety.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Any questions for Nicole or Tom?
Exciting.
So that'll be at the July regular board.
Thank you. Next up are course approvals.
So as you recall, last spring, we talked about asking the board to approve all of our courses because some of them were not approved and we wanted to make sure we have everything checked off as being approved. The request was to come in chunks. So we're giving you the easiest chunk first, the elementary one. They're all based on standards. There's not much to it other than these are the course requests that you have in front of you. We'll bring those to the July meeting and the next work session. We'll look to middle school and then we start the heavy lifting of the high school curriculum, each content area going from there. So per the request was to do them in small chunks. This is the smallest chunk you get to tee it up. So these are all standards based at the elementary level. Those are all the classes that we teach by law. We have to and go from there. So there's not a lot. Amy's not here tonight, but she said there's going to be the first one to turn over to me. It was the easy one. The next one's when they, like I said, we get more content specific, particularly course specific. That's when we'll dig into them a little bit deeper. Several have already been approved by the board, but the ones that do not have approvals on them, those are the ones that we're most concerned about.
So on this list that we have, how many things are we approving that aren't approved already?
How many on this list?
Yeah.
None of these, and they all should have been.
Okay.
Yeah. So none of these are, but it's. I think in the past, I will tell you that I think in the past it was kind of assumed you're required to do it, therefore it's board approved. We want to have a date on there when it's specifically board approved, so that if we do have one that we try to put into a classroom that is not board approved, that stands out. We need to make sure every course that we're teaching our kids is board approved. So we're starting with ones that we've been doing for, well, how long has Hudsonville been here? 100 years? I don't know.
1855.
Thank you, 113.
68.
Questions for Dr. Vandichia?
So there are links, there's all the links to all the different, there's high school and middle school content in those links, but we're only voting on the K-12.
K5.
That's one.
Yeah, in this point, it will be K5, even though you'll hear,
Sure.
because of the 5-6 building, some of these will get interesting, but this is still K5.
Got it. Perfect.
I don't know if they're supposed to, but none of the links work.
I think they were.
You're not
Any other questions? Next up, policy revisions, 5640, graduation requirements.
So as you heard earlier tonight, we talked a little bit about grad alliance or graduation alliance. Now we're going to talk a little bit about some adjustments we'd like to make to our graduation requirements. I'm going to turn it over to a whole group of people, starting with Mrs. Thomas. You're driving now.
Yep.
Maybe we can go through introductions and then start. So everyone will finish.
So I'm super thankful for this group. Not only did they spend time outside of school day working on this topic and preparing some talking points for this, but also outside of the school year. So you know me and Mr. Beal.
Hi.
You would introduce yourself.
Yeah, I'm Joe Kessel. I'm one of the school counselors at the high school. So my last name is D through H.
I am Amanda Ising. I'm a resource teacher at the high school and also the department chair for special ed.
I'm Liesl Kennedy. I'm one of the high school counselors here as well. And my part of the alphabet that I take care of is SB through Z. But I also help with the ELL students. I'm their counselor as well. And in our specialized programs, CI, ASD, and EI programs.
And I just wanted to say
This is why I say.
So our topic tonight is graduation requirements and alternative paths. This is a topic that has been identified by our Ottawa area ISD as a point of collective conversation across our districts in the region, looking specifically at our graduation rates regionally and the ways that Michigan provides for paths to expand the opportunity towards graduation. And so we're going to be specifically looking at a policy with proposed revisions that's in your packet if you want to follow along that way. Otherwise, we'll be walking through the PowerPoint with just breaking down those changes section by section. So to begin, we want to just paint the big picture and I'll turn over to Mr. Beal.
Yeah, thank you for your time tonight. We want to talk about the big picture first of graduation. And something that we're very proud of here is a very high graduation rate. We're usually around 99 or 98%. Often in a class of 487, like we just graduated not too long ago now, that might only be one or two students that, for whatever reason, get right toward the end and need one or two classes and just don't cut it. And they need a summer school class, or they just stop coming. And it's sad, but it does happen sometimes despite all of our best efforts. However, that is a really high graduation rate, one of the best around, and we're very proud of it. What it doesn't tell necessarily is the entire story about students that leave. That 99 or 98% means those are the students that we have at that time of graduation that are enrolled as 12th graders. And that's the number that graduates. And it's, again, something to celebrate and be very proud of. We have shown you this data before about students that have transferred out. In fact, it was part of the impetus for us a couple of months back, talking to you about an alternative program. So what it doesn't capture, and I guess what we want to kind of point out, what that high graduation rate doesn't capture is the number of students that transfer out of here that are behind pace towards graduation. And what that typically means, we use a kind of a formula of how many credits you can earn per year towards what the grand total is. You need 28 credits to graduate from Hudsonville High School. And through various reasons, it could be attendance, it could be poor grades, poor performance, but a myriad of reasons really, you could fall behind pace. This number right here, you can see it's been kind of steadily growing since 2019 when we went back and pulled this data. But the total number of students that are behind pace that have transferred out of Hudsonville High School since 2019-20 school year is 160 students. So part of the reason for the discussion tonight is, and for bringing the alternative program to you months ago, was how can we retain these students? Because for us, we want to do better. We want them to be here. And we looked at other districts and some ISD, what are other schools in the county doing? So this quick data kind of shows you a snapshot of that. On the left is all of our transfers, and in the yellow it's how many students were off track. But if you look at just the students who transfer out to go to non-traditional schools, what that means is typically online or mostly or partially online schools that have a reduced graduation requirement, credit total to only the Michigan Merit Curriculum required courses, which we'll talk about in a minute. You can see that when we look at students that leave for those schools, it's about 50%. That's the reason that they choose to leave Hudsonville High School. So we want to tackle that problem.
Can you go back to that, Jordan? I want to make sure I can adjust that. So
Sure.
Transfers on track versus off track.
Yeah.
Non-traditional, on track versus on.
Go
One more time with this.
Go back to
Yeah.
the slide, Amy.
Yeah, go back.
Can I take
Yeah,
a
go
step
ahead.
this minute, because I asked earlier too. So if
Yeah.
you look at the number of students at the top, you see alternative,
Yep.
different public, dropout, homeschool, online, other, parochial, and so forth. Some of those areas do not necessarily have a reduced number of credits for Michigan Merit Curriculum only.
Sure.
So you may go to a different public school, they probably have the same number of requirements maybe that we do, but not just the Michigan Merit Curriculum. Maybe you go to a parochial school, it's probably the same thing. However, if you go to an alternative school or a homeschool or an online program, those programs have reduced credits. So now go to the next slide. So if you take just those groups that have reduced credit,
I got you.
that's your chart on the right.
Gotcha.
The one on the left is everybody. So that 39.9%, if you go back a slide, that's that 39.9%. But if you remove those programs that don't have options for reduced credits, that's where you look at really 50% of our kids that transfer out are doing it to find a program that simply has the Michigan Merit Curriculum requirement. Now, that's not just 1 year, that's over the course of time. You see the volume, take 50%.
Yeah.
If you go back a slide, then you're looking at the volume of students that have done that. So 80 of the kids basically found a program that has a reduced number of credits, the Michigan Merit Curriculum to get done.
Another question, and are these students that stay within, I guess, this area or like Michigan, do these numbers take into account families that move like out of state or to the east side of the state?
Yeah, they move districts. The numbers, so there could be students that are maybe in the green section of the pie chart that are on pace. They just, maybe parents got a different job or they move districts, got a new house somewhere, and they just move out. So it takes those into consideration as well. But the increase that we're seeing when we look back even to 5 years ago is students that fall behind, we don't have anything to offer them to stay, to have a chance of earning a diploma.
So do we ask them questions if they're leaving?
Mm-hmm.
Do we have a survey?
Yeah, a lot of it is even more personal than that, because it's the counselors often work with them very directly. We get transcript requests also from other schools, so it's not just we don't know where they went, because we have to transfer their CA-60, their records from all the way back when they enrolled in public school. So it's not just a generic survey, I don't think, but we talked about crafting one of those.
Yes.
But really, this is data that we pull because we enter in when they leave, we have to enter in our Power School student information system the reason for leaving. So we can pull that data there.
And there are plenty that offer the reason why they leave unsolicited.
Right.
But there are others that we get a CA-60 request because we haven't seen the kid in 2 weeks, and then it's, I guess they moved.
That goes back to one of the questions that I'm talking about with Barb and Dr. Vanderjack about getting information on people who are leaving our district for whatever reason. And I think it would be very good if we took the time to do that, and maybe we have the availability of our counselors who could do that, and talk to families as, okay, why are you leaving?
Yeah.
And
So it's a little bit, I mean, we're talking specifically high school.
I understand.
But it's definitely something
Right.
that we as a district administration would like to know.
Yeah, and again, from the data that we're showing, we can presume, and through the conversations with counselors and administrators, we know the reason why half of those students are leaving. It's because they're behind in their credit totals.
So Jordan, how would these students, with the help of their parents, find places that will allow them to, or is it readily apparent out there where they can
Yeah,
go?
they'll Google it. I mean, I kind of want to have the counselors tell you they're the first line of conversation. You want to jump in here?
Yeah, there's billboards, and then there's also online, like Google searches. So there are actually billboards on 196 closer to Grand Rapids for whatever virtual online learning.
Okay, so that's what they're.
Sorry, taking too much time on the slide. Go ahead.
Okay. So when we talk about the specific policy that's in your board packet, there's two terms that it mentions. One is the Michigan Merit Curriculum and one is a personal curriculum. And so we wanted to just define what those two terms mean by the Michigan legislature before we get further into what's current and what's proposed. So the first acronym there is MMC, which stands for Michigan Merit Curriculum, and Jordan will explain what that means.
Yeah, this is when we talk about Michigan high school standards. It's really the legislation that kind of lays out what the minimum requirements are to earn a diploma in the state of Michigan at a public high school. What that means typically is 4 credits of English, 4 of math, 3 of science, 3 of social studies, and then a credit of PE, 2 credits of world language, and 1 of visual performing and applied arts. That math is 18 total credits. We have 28, like I mentioned previously, in order to earn a Hudsonville High School diploma. So that's 10 more credits or 20 classes beyond what the minimum requirements are. And a lot of those are filled with students by electives or advanced placement classes. And there's a lot of selection when it comes to a trimester where you can take 2.5 credits per trimester. So that's what we mean. We're not talking about specific curriculum. I know you just talked about course approvals for elementary, and we're going to be going through that process. But this isn't specific curriculum. This is the legislation that says this is what you guarantee for a Michigan high school diploma.
So while the Michigan Department of Ed provides that Michigan Merit Curriculum and the requirements within, it also provides a tool called the Personal Curriculum, which is a vehicle that's available to students and their families when it is appropriate to make a modification to the Michigan Merit Curriculum. And so there's set reasons for why a personal curriculum may be needed. So just as Jordan mentioned, it's not curriculum in the traditional sense. It's really about individualizing a student's pathway towards graduation, keeping in mind that for some students, modifying those 18 credit requirements may be both needed and appropriate. And so this is taken from the personal curriculum guidelines, which were included in Friday's board briefs if you care to learn more about that topic. So the personal curriculum aims to support both, or three things. One is for students trying to work towards enhancement, so or enrichment. So if a student is particularly fond of the sciences, hopes to go into pre-med, they may make a modification, which reduces a credit requirement in another core content area to take additional classes in the sciences. It also speaks to supporting students who transfer high school. We know that each Michigan high school has the autonomy to set different requirements, and so that can make it especially difficult for students transferring during these years to reach high school requirements, so personal curriculum may apply in those circumstances. And then finally, personal curriculum also aims to support students with IEPs to allow for modifications which are not generally available to any student. So we're going to speak to how these apply to our current board policy and how they're impacting our students today. So the first section that you'll notice is about students receiving special education services. So currently our board policy does use a bit of a dated term, and it speaks to giving the discretion of whether it's appropriate to an IEP team. And an IEP stands for an individualized education program, and that's a term that's specific to students who are eligible for special education services and have programs and services that help them advance the curriculum. What the IEP doesn't do is guarantee the receipt of a diploma, and it doesn't set out what the requirements are. All of those things come from board policy. And so what this current section is saying is that students with who receive special education services, who successfully complete the programs within their IEP and meet the requirements for high school diploma, and have received the recommendation of the IEPC. This section is problematic because it is not the responsibility of the IEP team to set the requirements for graduation. It's also, the language from MDE also speaks to the decision about whether a PC is approved or not should be a separate team, and that's a personal curriculum team. So we have some proposal for changes around that, but before we get to that, Amanda's just going to share a student story that kind of captures what a student profile might look like in that, in this scenario.
Yeah, so I'm just going to give an example of what it would be in the best interest of the student to utilize the PC. And a good example that I could kind of wrap my brain around is a student with a physical disability and then the required course of PE. So like in this circumstance, we could use a personal curriculum to take out PE and replace it with a course that aligns with their post-secondary goals. So what is their plan? What are they transitioning to? In terms of life after high school, for career, for education and training, do they want to live independently? And all of those things are stated within the IEP, and that it does have to align. So for an example, we could take out PE and replace it with like foods and nutrition, where they're learning to cook and prepare meals, and which would help independent living. It could also be replaced with Microsoft Excel to help support the students' maybe career goal if they wanted to be an administrative assistant. And have like a desk job or do data entry. So it's really taking out a course that the student wouldn't be physically able to do due to their disability, and then putting it in a course that better aligns with their post-secondary goals. Does that make sense? Okay.
So you'll see in the attachment, the proposed language that we have is that students with IEPs trying to use that first and first language who successfully complete the coursework approved within a personal curriculum. And we would just want to note that that personal curriculum would also require approval from the principal, director of special services, and assistant superintendent of curriculum and instruction, that student may participate in graduation activities and receive a high school diploma. This second part speaks to how far can the personal curriculum go in terms of modification, because as you might see in state guidance, they don't give a minimum standard. That again goes back to local decision making. So what we did is we participated over the course of the year in these regional trainings, which involved a consultant from the Michigan Department of Education, and then we brought that information back to our high school department chairs to say, what do you think of all this information? Where do you see this landing? Think about the student profiles that this would impact. And so the proposed language that we have in this section is that students with an IEP and a personal curriculum must show proficiency and earn credit in at least 12 of the 18 Michigan Merit curriculum requirements, including at least 2 ELA credits, one of which must be English 1A and B, and 2 math credits, one of which must be Algebra 1A and B. So we tried to set some limit within the tool itself, because the Michigan guidance does not provide that. Again, they turn it over to the local school to make those decisions within. And so Amanda's just going to share another example of a student profile that might fit this scenario.
Yeah, so this would be a student with a significant disability in math who is intellectually the same as peers, but is entering high school maybe at a 7th grade math level. The post-secondary goal would maybe to be work in a child care center. And in this situation, it would be best to have the student work at their grade level, build and strengthen skills, and try to get them through Algebra 1 and Geometry by the end of their senior year, and then utilize a personal curriculum to take out Algebra 2 and then replace it with like financial management. Of course, that would strengthen financial literacy and help build skills for independent living. So ultimately, it'd be taking out Algebra 2, but because they're at a 7th grade level, still getting as much math in as we possibly can, but instead of Algebra 2, something more applicable to independent living and replacing it with like financial management.
So first, go ahead.
Yeah, I have a question. So I was trying to read through, I think it's attachment 3 that we have. It doesn't line up with the exact language.
The new one does, the one that Robert showed out.
This one I'm looking at right now, right?
Oh, you're looking at the one in the Dropbox?
Yeah.
Okay.
Just because I was like reading it over and over and over. I think the one that I'm looking at from the Dropbox is just missing the part they can participate in graduation activities and receive a high school diploma that's marked off in ours, so we just want to align.
I'll fix it.
The actual policy itself, if you look in the packet, the 5460 has all of these changes that we'll bring to the board, but we get chunked them out, so we'll make sure that's lined up correctly.
Yeah, that's what I'm looking at, right? So I think it's just redlined by accident or something.
Okay.
Good catch.
That was
Clean windows.
The personal curriculum is not a tool for every student. It certainly requires decision-making about understanding what the student's disability is, as well as their post-secondary goals and hopes. There is still the option for students to complete with something called a certificate of completion. Sometimes our students who are working entirely on an alternate curriculum that will go on to maybe receive services at our Young Adult Services Center, they would continue to have access to that coursework and receive a certificate of completion. To Amanda's example, this is maybe a tool that's applicable for students who intellectually or otherwise may proceed towards college or career, but because of the severity of their disability, they may require more modifications than other students. So the second section that we want to speak to is the total number of credits. For that, I'll turn it over to Jordan.
Yeah, board policy currently specifically there says for the class of 2021 and beyond, 28 credits is required to graduate, as we previously discussed. And I just thought I would point out that it says for the class of 2021, we've been doing 28 for longer than that, but we had to make modification during COVID to reduce that number when we shut down and had some struggles that we don't need to go back into. But that's why it says for the class of 2021 and beyond. So the proposed language talks about kind of a couple things there in the language that's in pink on the screen about students that have the approved personal curriculum, but it also has another portion at the end of that kind of paragraph about being excused from up to 2 elective credits as approved by the building principal. What that would mean is it would not be something that's decided on by just me arbitrarily. I'm hopefully wise enough to know I don't have all the wisdom and would love to work with the team, and there would be some administrative guidelines that would kind of lay out that it wouldn't be just my decision, but to Mandy's point that whether it's a personal curriculum team or a team made up of the guidance counselor, the assistant principal, any other potential itinerant staff that works with the student to decide whether it's something that's appropriate. It's not something that we would do often, but it is language that's similar to what other schools in our area have done. Typically, if there's a need for this, we do have to bring any individual case, and again, they are rare, to you for individual approval. Sometimes that is a process that is too long, honestly, for a family to make a decision on whether they can stay or whether they're going to have to find a different place to have hope to earn a diploma. So this is partially kind of trying to expedite that, but I just wanted to point out that it would not be just the building principal, it would be a team that I would be a part of with some of the people sitting here with us tonight. So that's kind of what the language need changes on your total credits.
I think Lisa has an example of where this might apply.
I've got a couple scenarios just from like working here for the past couple of years in which students could have or coming up could benefit from the reduction from 28 credits to 26. And this is not reducing Michigan Merit curriculum. That's why we have the PCPs. This is elective credits. So one case study would be a student that is placed in the Hudsonville school system through like Bethany Christian Services, through refugee, or even a student who's immigrating to the US. And typically in those cases, these students are older, so they come to us turning 19 in their junior year. And so typically then when they turn 20, their senior year, they can't complete. So we're looking at early graduation, but even with early graduation, we're still hoping that they can get through all the Michigan Merit curriculum, then some. And if they can then have like a reduced 2 credits, or 4 classes that will get them to the 26 credits, then they can actually graduate with a Hudsonville diploma. They can go to a 2-year college or they can just join the workforce. And for those students too, it's really, especially for refugee students, making money, sending money back home, really important for them to get that high school diploma and setting them up. So that would be a case where we would really be able to help that student meet them where they're at, giving where they came from. Another scenario would be students who sometimes transfer from different states or even within the state. We don't know all the information when they come to us, but there are sometimes extenuating circumstances in the home that student was taken from their home in whichever state or here in Michigan lived, is then placed with a family here in Hudsonville, and due to their circumstances now, might have missed some credits in their previous school. So now they're already behind coming in, and we try to meet them where they're at. Some students have an IEP, so they already receive some academic support, but even with that, if they can get through Michigan Merit curriculum, and if we can give them 26 credits versus 28 credits, setting them up for success that way as well. And I think where we are seeing now with trend upwards with our mental health statistics that we all are aware of, we have some students who sometimes have to go for a longer time in some of these long-term facilities. So up to 1 to 2 months that they have to be in there to just get them back to ground zero so they can transition back into high school. And during that time, when they're in those programs, it is such a regimented day that they have. So typically a student then has maybe an hour a day in which they can do schoolwork. And we have how many hours a day here? 5. So how is the student going to keep up with those credits that they're now missing? And even like when they leave halfway through the trimester, I can't give them credit for that. So now they're out, now they have to come back and make up all their credits, keeping on to more of those like anxiety of then having to make up some of those credits. And again, we're not talking about changing Michigan Merit curriculum. These are simply elective credits that if we had that as an option to give to a parent, because we're sitting on a phone call with those parents saying, yeah, well, we'll do our best here, but your kid still has to do the 28 credits. That's a very difficult conversation to have. So if we have this as an option for those students, and it's rare. We don't have a whole lot, but if we can have that, it would certainly, again, help that student then transition back to Hudsonville here in school and then get them to their diploma to set them up for success.
And just to reiterate, you can probably recall the number of times we've come to the board and asked for a reduction of credits with one later this evening. It doesn't happen that often. And if there are additional reduction credit requests, that would be something we'd still continue to bring to the board. But this gives some flexibility to the administration.
I have a question. You had stated that you've been at Hudsonville just for a few years.
Since 2019.
Okay. And were you a counselor at the school you came from before?
Yes, no. I was in a private school.
Okay, the only reason I'm asking was, did you notice a big difference in the fact that the school I came from might have been 26 credits, this is 28? Wow, this is a big difference, or?
I came from a private small school, so it's kind of hard.
Please keep in mind that trimesters are different than
Yes.
semesters. So they're different. The Michigan Merit curriculum also does have elective credits built into it that they can take, so it's not like you're only taking the core. There are electives that are built into it that have also.
I have one more question. I don't know who this is appropriate for, but Okay, so we say we have kids who are leaving once they see they can't make it, they're gonna go somewhere else. Do we have parents and families who come into the district who initially meet with us and say right at the beginning, I can't do this? And do we know what number that is and how many students we lose on the front end rather than the back end?
They would probably know more anecdotally, but that wouldn't be something that would go in our student information system. But I guess if you want to speak to that anecdotally, I mean,
Yeah, there are some
two of 5
students
counselors here.
that when they come in to meet with us and we have their transcript from their previous school, we'll go through and we kind of map out what the next year, 2 years, 3 years will look like for them. And there are some students who like look at us with shock, like, oh my goodness, like I won't be able to get there. And there are some students and families who decide that they're gonna choose a different route for their students. So I had one coming from Allendale previous the school year who didn't end up with us, and I had 2 from Byron that are coming in. That hopefully are going to be very successful.
A lot of it depends also on what courses they took in their previous school. If they tried to take most of their electives their freshman year, now they have to come here to take all the required stuff.
Why do you have to be on a PC to do this? Basically what you're saying is we're going from 28 to 26. The MMC is 18.
You don't have to have personal curriculum.
Okay.
This is unless they have one. The personal curriculum might look different.
Yeah, because
Unless the student
Unless they have a personal curriculum.
Which includes substituting the excused from up to 2 o'clock.
So the first section here is just saying sometimes a personal curriculum may not substitute a course, it may just eliminate a course requirement. And so by eliminating a course requirement, then you already have a student that has less than 28 credits. So that's the first clause.
Okay.
That the clause for less than 28 may be because of the personal curriculum.
Okay.
The second clause is speaking to the hardship that may require a reduction in credits unrelated to the PC. Yep.
How many, do you have any idea how many kids we have in IEP in the high school, percentage?
Should be
So we have about
14%.
Just shy of 15%.
14.7, I think is the last number.
yeah, and I would say, so we have 7 at the high school doing, so I'm seeing 10 through 12 graders, and I would say that there's probably 1 student per caseload where would be really applicable. So it's not a ton, and we're obviously trying to get them through as much as we possibly can, and there are just like certain circumstances where it's like, the math disability or whatnot, and so it's not a lot, but.
Yeah, just trying to wrap my head around how many kids. I'm familiar obviously from like the cognitive part, but I wasn't familiar with like the physical component that fit into that as well. It's interesting. That makes sense. So, thank you.
And the last portion of the board policy revision proposed change is related to alternative education. And so, Joe, do you mind kicking us off with this?
Yeah, so the current, with the Kellinsville virtual program, there was an ability for students to graduate with a Michigan Merit Curriculum who are participating in that program. And so this would extend it to hopefully one that we can pilot this next year and have in-house to keep the students and to keep them working with Hudsonville staff where they've already developed relationships. And so using a different name on a diploma, so instead of Hudsonville High School, it's a Hudsonville Alternative Education Program, would set it up so the students could complete the 18-credit Michigan Merit Curriculum using potentially Grad Alliance, which Craig talked about earlier. So these are students who, based on what we've pitched to a handful of them so far as potential students who might be interested in this, are students who had a rough relationship with school for a year or 2 years in terms of passing classes and getting credits. But something happened with their maturity over the course of turning 16, being able to drive. At some point, they were able to see that a high school diploma was what they wanted to. But with 28 credits, even 26 credits, even 24 credits might, for that student who's tried Algebra 1A 4 or 5 times in a row, might not be attainable. So having an alternative education program for them would be something that could allow them to pursue their dreams and their goals. So the ones that we've pitched it to so far, I've been in a tech center program and are really excited to work with cars. They're really excited to be a phlebotomist and draw blood, or whatever it might be, that they want to get a high school diploma and they want to be a contributing, awesome member of society and potentially stay local and be part of what we have here. So those are the kind of students who we want to be able to continue to support and really wrap our arms around them and figure out how to get them into jobs, how to get them with a diploma out to the next step in life for them. So yeah, and then Craig has some more like nuts and bolts.
Yeah, not too much to add. I don't want to mire anybody in details, but the big change is that we would still incorporate Kellogg'sville virtual students if they were to attend. It's not like that in would. And then the schedule that we're trying to work out is they would take 2 classes at a time and really focus on those, and it would be what would be called a sequential learner. And so we've spoken with pupil accounting person at the ISD and worked out what that would look like for them to take those classes and then work their way towards that required amount of 18.
So we've been meeting to plan since Amy and I presented to you a few months ago regarding the alternative education high school idea, and this is kind of the first step towards that, along with the Graduation Alliance proposal that Craig talked about earlier, and then realizing that we needed foreign language to support it for the pilot for this upcoming year.
So, real quick question. So the graduation lines that you talked about before, how could you help us kind of connect the dots between that and this year?
Yeah, really that would just be the platform through which we would facilitate the coursework.
Okay, got it. Okay.
And so based on all the options available to us.
Sure.
That would be the most workable and of the highest quality from what we found in our comparison. Revisited Spring Lake's alternative program and talked to Northview, they use Grad Alliance, and Allendale as well, their alternative program is. So we feel pretty confident that it would be a good step, at least to give a trial pilot run.
So should this say graduation lines?
No, that's the curriculum component.
Got it.
This is the graduation requirement policy that just says that if they complete the requirements through the alternative program, that platform would be approved by the board, but that is not approved as part of the curriculum. No different than Kellogg's.
Yeah.
Kellogg'sville.
We had language for
Kellogg'sville could have a different curriculum that they use, but it's through their program.
Perfect. Got it. Now it makes sense.
Yeah, basically we had language for Kellogg'sville, but not for our own.
Got it. Yeah, got it.
So back 20 years ago, the idea was that we'd have packets, right? If you're an alternative program, you'd get an algebra 1 packet. Once you completed it, you go to algebra 2 or geometry. Now everything's moved into an online environment, which is much more interactive. It's better for kids. And quite frankly, we taught them all how to do it during COVID. So now we're trying to figure out what is the best program to use. But in order to use the program, there still is a certain number of credits. And if you go into an alternative program, traditionally they don't have as many electives that they have to take. They meet the Michigan Merit Curriculum requirements to graduate.
And the difference between this and the PC conversation that we've been talking about is this would actually be a different diploma.
Yep.
So eventually, this is a pilot here coming up, eventually we'll be going for potentially a new school code, a new school name.
Thank you.
I know the focus of this is on those students that we lose because of credit. They're not meeting the threshold of credits. But it seems like this will also give us options potentially to deal with those students. We deal with expulsions and things like that, right? And students.
Depends on the requirement of the expulsion. If it's a state required expulsion, then this probably wouldn't be an option. But if there are other pathways towards graduation, we don't have any right now. And this will give us another pathway towards graduation.
And the idea is the 160 that we saw in the spreadsheet, because it had left the reduction in 2 credits. What percentage?
Yeah.
So if we went back to that,
it's a good
if
question.
you look at that number, if you look at the dropout number, that might be one avenue that you would see could be affected by having an alternative program. There are some others of people that transfer out based on the number of credits. If they leave our school to go to another alternative program, that would be another one that's affected. But you're not going to see it affected by the parochial for the most part.
Yeah.
Maybe the homeschool, but you're going to see the dropout and the alternative. That first and third line, those are the ones that could be affected. by
Yeah. So I'm just trying to wrap my head around it. This all makes sense. It seems great. It's a lot of work, it seems like. I just want to make sure we're helping more than 4 kids.
Absolutely.
4 years. So
I think between the between the two conversations with alternative education as an option for students who are really far behind in credits, and then the PC language and even the elective credit reduction, we're trying to capture all of what you see up here, not just the 10 or 12 kids that we might pilot for alternative education, but provide opportunity for as many as we can to see that.
In full transparency, it's gonna take time to get this off the ground, to get it working with the counselors, with the staff, with the personal curriculum, to alternative ed, to the program we're using, all of that stuff's gonna take time.
Also, I do think, like currently now, if a student, we feel like might not be able to get through the Michigan Merit Curriculum, like we have to talk about maybe change of programming, which that would mean they earn a certificate of completion versus a diploma. Where if we have this, more kids would maybe be able to stay and stick on a diploma track and earn a diploma. So I think that's where it would help in as well.
That's all really important.
Yeah, so,
And I think the counselors have all generated like a potential list of kids that may be candidates for the alternative education, but I think that there is like this sense of wanting to be able to assure that that option would lead to a diploma versus sort of leaving that open-ended at this time.
We need the policy adjustments so that we don't have an alternative ed program that gets the kids to the point of being a dropout when they're done because they didn't meet the requirements set by the board. So that's why having the requirement set by the board allows them to still get a diploma, where if we had an alternative ed program without policy adjustments, we'd get them all the way through and they'd be considered a dropout. And that's not our goal.
When do they typically leave? When do they typically exit? Maybe it's out there, I have 2,800.
I would say
Anytime.
anytime,
Junior.
anecdotally their junior year, because that's when they realize, oh, I only have
They're not gonna
maybe
make it.
in the spring of their junior year, they only have 4 more trimesters to go, and then they see how many courses they need in order to attain the 28. And so a lot of times it's spring of their junior year.
So I have a workload question. Just like Pat said, when we opened up a new school, how much more it costs us. And I'm not saying this is a reason to do it or not do it, but do you see a need for additional, and I don't want the counselors to be listening to it, do you see a need for additional counselors because of this, or is this workload that's just absorbed?
Well,
Can I?
yeah, absolutely.
So I will tell you that we continue to monitor the caseloads of our counselors and the expectations. I will also tell you that our counselors have spent an enormous amount of time on behavioral, on mental health issues with our students, and not truly being a registrar and trying to get kids to graduate time. We're trying to give, from a cost standpoint, we believe, and I know we're not really talking about alternative ed, but we believe that the volume of students that we can get to stay in our system will sustain the program's needs. If in the future, and I will tell you, I came from a district that had a very robust alternative ed program. If the volume gets to a point where we have to align and add additional resources for not only those students, but so that other students can be taken care of also, because we can't just say, hey, focus on those 24 kids.
Right.
We have another 1,976 that'll be here, or whatever the number is. So we continue to monitor those numbers to make sure that, number one, they have the skill set needed to support them, but also they have the size of their caseload can be monitored. If this building continues to grow at this rate, we'll always have to add additional staff. And I know Ann Armstrong hasn't left yet. She almost got up and walked out.
No, I'm super excited. Counselors are super easy to find.
Well, another thing is this is a societal cost going forward, having these kids productive in society with a diploma, rather than just drifting around out there when they're 18, 19, 20, 30 years old.
Yeah. You hit the nail on the head. We want them to be here and be successful.
And those are some supports that we've dreamed about as well, having community business partnerships, having people come in and mentor these students to help them not only learn, check off the Michigan Merit Curriculum checkpoints along the way, but also have a sense of community. And
to Mr. Kessel's point early on, the relationships have been built strong their first couple of years, and I think those are the best people, from teaching staff, counseling staff, administrative staff. They know these kids. Let's help them get across the finish line.
Any other questions?
So we will be approving this program, or we will be evaluating the
So,
program.
yeah, so the program evaluation, we're gonna pilot it, so you'll continue to get updates on that, and you'll hear about that. The actual board policy adjustments we'll bring to the board for first reading in July, second reading in August, before school starts.
Thank you guys very
Thank you very much. Great work. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up, early graduation request.
Because we don't have a policy in place yet, there's a request for a reduction in credits for 2 elective credits. I sent you the description in your board packet. I did meet with President Hooper and Mr. Bolway to talk about this because I wanted to make sure that this is a fair request before I brought it to the full board. Traditionally, we bring this to the board in a work session. If there are any questions, please let me know, and then we'll put this on the consent agenda so that it's approved. Again, I think this is the 3rd time I've come to the board in 5 years. So based on the conversations we've had about making adjustments to the graduation requirements, this in the future would be something that would go through Mr. Beal and his staff because it's a reduction in elective credits. If there was a reduction in Michigan merit curriculum credits, it could very well be through a personal curriculum. If not, that too would come back to the board and go from there. So you can read the email and hopefully get an understanding. Just based for protection reasons, it's heavily redacted.
Any questions for Dr. Van Jett?
So we did have to I did meet with the counselor to talk about what this looks like because this is a very heavy summer. So it's still a summer of summer school, but it also prepares the students to have an opportunity to graduate with peers next spring. And
Advertising at athletic events.
it has been fairly standard practice for Hudsonville Public Schools to have very professional facilities, 24 hours a day. We have some exceptions to our advertising. If you go to a football game, if you go to in the event where there's a PA announcer, there might be intermission or halftime announcements. Some are from the MHSAA, some are the local support. You go to a football game, you'll hear about maybe whoever supplied meals or pizza or something to that effect. We in the past have not been a big fan, and I am not a big fan either, of having advertisement broadcast throughout our facilities 24 hours a day. You can look at many neighboring facilities. I'm not going to throw anybody under a bus, or moving bus from that point. But you can drive by facilities and you'll see all sorts of paraphernalia. There's a school on the other side of the state. I will tell you, if you go to the pool at Saline High School, you can't even tell the school colors on the wall because there's 7 dentist offices and there's 3 orthodontists and they're all over. That comes with a revenue source that comes to the program, to our athletic department. There has been a request that we potentially alter this past that we've always followed under as a board. That we do not have a high-tech video board at our track and field and football complex at Baldwin Middle School. We've had a vendor, or I'll say 3, that have thrown out, hey, if we donate enough, can we put our name on the board and we'll fund the board to put out there. It would be a permanent sign on the back of the board. If you look where the scoreboard is now, the concession stand is behind the scoreboard. If you do the video on one side and you put advertising on the back side of it, technically if you're leaving the concession stand, you see the advertisement. If you're sitting at a football game, you see the scoreboard. At our I'm just giving you a lot of things to think about here. At our new field house, we do not have any permanent advertisement at our new field house. The scoreboards are designed to do advertisement during intermissions, timeouts, half times, pregame, postgame. But when that facility is not in use, the scoreboard is off, and it's Hudsonville Public Schools. This would be different because at the football field, you'd have the scoreboard, which could have advertisement on one side, but have permanent advertisement on the back. It still follows the same board policy when it comes to what can be on there. We can't be We're not gonna get a sponsor from Budweiser and put it on the back of the billboard. It's not gonna be a tobacco product that we're putting on the back of the billboard. It's not gonna be some, anything that violates board policy. But I told the person that made the request I'd bring it to the board and have a discussion. It does not take board action, but I also want to do what I think the expectation was from this board for years, and I know that this facility is a little bit different because it's a scoreboard that we don't have in our budget and people are asking for it.
So to be clear, are we talking about the football field or the
Yeah.
field house, or both?
Field house is done.
That's all.
Field house is done, but I will, to that point,
Yeah.
if we put a scoreboard up at the football field, you're talking a digital, nice, high-res scoreboard. Bill's smiling back there, he's like, let's go. On the back would then have potential signs. It could have one sign, it could say Meyer, it could say Gemmons, it could say J&H, it could say Royal Technology, it could, all the different companies that we have in the community. Chick-fil-A, I think you go to Granville's tennis court, you see Chick-fil-A, Lowe's, and there's one more, Williams and Company. Because they throw a bunch of money at the tennis program and they could put a sign up there all year. If we do that, and we put that at the football field, which I think is a fair thing for us to pursue. My personal opinion thinks, you know what, if the board said go ahead and look into it more, I'm not gonna say we're gonna do it without bringing it back to the board and say here's what they're proposing, here's what it would look like. I think it has to go, I would want the board to approve any permanent signs that go throughout the district for advertisement. Because my worry is that the next thing is, like, oh, we saw this at the football field, can we put a new one at the pool, and now we're putting new signs there? If let's do a different one at the field house, or what about the current gym, we wanna do ones there, so let's put more signs up there. I would think at least my personal opinion, if the board said go ahead and look into this more, give us some more details. I have always pushed back and said, no, that is not what Hudsonville does. But if the board's like, let's take a deeper look, a deeper dive, I could do that. But I still think any permanent signage should be approved by the board and not. There have been people that have put signs up in our district at football events. If you look at when they come out of the tunnel, there was a sign there. And the minute that got done, I made somebody take it down because that's not the expectation we had. At least that was my feeling. I know probably Mark and Ken, Dawn's not here, might have another history prior to me being here, but I was trying to be consistent with what I thought the expectations of the board were.
If you allow one location, it kind of opens the door for tennis courts, the old pool.
Well, it may, but it also, if it's board approved, it may not. I mean, here's the differences between the two. If Meyer wants to donate $500,000 to put a scoreboard up at the football field, that to me is different than a company putting a sign at tennis to donate $50,000 to the programs. Does that make sense? So you're supporting the program versus a structure, if that makes some sense. But you and Ken might have some history.
TVs, and the TV programs that was sponsored by somebody, I believe they had TVs in every classroom initially, and I think
Whittle?
Yes. I can't remember what it was.
Whittle would be the Title I or Channel 1.
Channel 1 advertising aspect to it as well.
Was it permanent? Was it on the screen when it came up? Do you remember? I don't see any permanent signs in this district that are, truly the only sign I see right now permanent is thank you Hudsonville, and it says ORK and GMB because that's who's designing it because we have construction going on. But you don't see, you go to the pool, you don't see Meyer. East Grand Rapids pool, I was there when we put it in, and on the scoreboard there's a bunch of advertisement because they bought a new scoreboard.
I'm just reluctant about it, Even in the past, I just have some apprehensions about where to draw the lines, where you stop, what can they advertise, what they cannot advertise.
Well, and to some degree, you could have oversight on that too.
Yeah.
say if it's a sign, it's not gonna say, if it says Meyer, it's gonna say Meyer. It's not gonna have some logo on it or some saying that is not approved by the board. But, a new scoreboard at the football field is gonna cost about $700,000 to $800,000.
In our history has always been, just with kids, and I'm kind of looking at Jordan, because it sounds like you've got some thoughts on this, which is good. Sure. Good to hear. But our history has always been, gosh, they just, we're all bombarded with advertisement all the time. And this was before the days of social media. So we add on social media on top of that, and it's just constant advertising. And so our position, right, wrong, good or bad, as a board was, boy, if we don't need it, we're not trying to fund things off there. We don't need the new. So let's just not go there. No, again, that was our position over the years.
When somebody's willing to write a check for $800,000 and put their name on the back of the board for 10 years, it just takes a different.
No, I'm
just a difference than that you do not have.
Maybe like
There's nothing. Well, and then to some degree we do that already with announcing, but then when the game's over, the game's over. You're looking at something now. It's also not in a location. If you think about our marquee signs that say the 5-6 building or the high school that's going up, those don't have advertising on it. When you have a program and you go to an event, that'll have advertising on it. You take it with you. It's not permanently fastened to any part of our structures.
So just to be clear, it would be like a digital board on the field side, and on the back side, it's a static thing. Right. So it's not like both sides are digital, you just have it there during the game.
You go to any other school in the conference. You go to every other school in the conference, you will see permanent signage that have sponsored programs. Now, the difference here is if we did something like this, it's towards a structure. And I also struggle with those that'll say, hey, we'll donate $50,000 for the program, but it goes towards football. Right. This is supporting track, this is support the band when they're performing there, that scoreboard can be used, it can, when the band's performing, it can be video on them that shows the kids on the field. And there's a lot of other things you can do. In this board is a little bit different, because in the field house, we didn't want to do that because there's not really a location on that to put something. But if you take a video board for the football field or the track and field location, it's on the back side. So you put them on the back side of the one in the field house, and nobody can see it because it's on the back of the wall. You can't see it on the back side.
How many skyboxes could we fit at the football field, Pat?
Zero, because there's no elevators. We
have an interesting situation with the elevator.
And this could be a conversation that you said, just, hey, give us a better idea of what the cost is, what we're willing to do. What I don't want to do is say, yes, we can do something like this, and we generate half of the money. And now we got to throw the half of it at it, where this is not the understanding that we had. And what happens to the maintenance of it? What happens to the upkeep and those kind of things? Is that a really thing?
I think it's worth exploring. I'd like to know how big the sign's going to be, what the sign would cost, what the whole structure would cost, and then also make sure that we have the ability to have these conversations in the future if it's explored again.
Yeah, I agree with Mark. This won't be probably the last one. It's the first one. We approve it. It'll probably be get the structure. I totally respect the precedents. It all makes sense to me, but part of something I've been thinking about is I want more kids involved in extracurriculars, and I think cost is often a barrier because now you have to pay to play. Like when we were growing up, you just go for the team and do all that. I just see a lot of kids that my kids have played with, they get to a certain point where they can't play anymore because their families can't afford to do the travel. And all of that is very common now. So this is a topic, I know we're just talking about just this board, but in general, as time goes on, as we talk about outside entities offering to fund different things.
So the challenge, I hear what you're saying, I'm going to push back a little bit, respectfully. Okay. The challenge is our booster organization, which has been amazing, has had to channel a lot of their money towards, we call it cloth. uniforms.
Yep.
Right? And we've since made some adjustments to the budget, like recently, like in the last month, right? To really change that structure. So the boosters will hopefully have an opportunity to say, hey, how do we support students that are in need? Because there are people that can afford easily to pay for pay to play, and there are ones that cannot afford it at all. So we want to make sure the boosters can be involved in that, and they haven't been able to as much. They've done a ton of them, but they also have been so strapped with raising money's not easy right now. And then what they were allocating money towards, that structure is changing. The other part is it's also hard when it comes to advertising, because with the pay to play for track and field or for cross country is the same as pay to play is for football. But we're going to fill up the football field on a Friday night, and we're not charging anybody to go watch cross country, and we don't have advertising at cross country. So balancing all that out is always a challenge. So trying to have an avenue for those that need support to not only feel comfortable asking for it confidentially, but to be able to be supported by the boosters is something that I know our boosters would be very in support of trying to work through. They've just been strapped because it was prior to me, but it was a while ago. They started taking care of cloth and it kept going, and now like slow down. We're going to take care of that. They can do the job of the boosters.
Perfect. That's awesome.
And they've been, and you can't do without a boosters right now. They're
So you're saying that we could, we've had the precedents in the past. We could, to Andrew's point, kind of dip a toe in the water and come back with some, we could do this and it costs this, and this company or these people, they're companies, right?
Yeah.
We donate the amount of money to it, and we could proceed cautiously and keep guardrails on through board policy to say, no, we don't want it, but we will allow it, or it has to come to a review here, so we can keep those guardrails on tight and proceed cautiously. Is that a fair summary of what?
That's what I'm asking to pursue. I am not a fan of permanent signage to support operation of a program. If you want to bring in meals for the press box for a football game or meals for the football program, I'm not a fan of putting a sign on the fence because Tony Benton, I don't know, somebody that, no.
Donating to
No.
a tennis program or something.
No.
Support the operations. This is unique because it's.
Right. Our entrance to the tennis facility is our entrance to the tennis facility. We don't need, a decal on the side that says partially sponsored by. You see everywhere you go, every school in the OK Red. Is that fair, Mr. Beal?
Pretty close.
I can't think of any in the OK Red that you don't.
I don't see a lot of Kentwood, honestly.
You do on their new football sign. Their new football sign has another. Now, on the other hand, I'm going to throw a twist into here. If they build the signs and the permanent signs on the back of it, they might throw money at the program, and part of the agreement is on the video board at halftime, it might have some of our sponsors for the operational side, but that shuts off. The actual structure was sponsored with people on the back side of the board. It makes sense to me, but I've been thinking about it for 3 years, so I'm just trying.
And that's no different than at halftime when they.
That's correct.
Tell everyone that's sponsored.
Yeah, Uccello's is a proud sponsor of Hudsonville Athletics.
Yeah, I like the clean, this is Hudsonville, this is our facility, but I also understand if someone wants to spend $700,000, $800,000, like that's the conversation we're having, I think.
So it sounds to me like you've evolved in this from your earlier thought process of, no, we don't want to do it.
I don't want to walk into any of our facilities and feel overwhelmed with advertising.
Right.
And in many places you go to, it looks that way. But I also know that we don't have anything earmarked for our athletic complex, and there's a lot of requests for it. And it would look nice if somebody else bought it.
I'm willing to listen. I just wonder, in fairness to the rest of the businesses, shouldn't we put it out for bids?
Oh yeah, absolutely. This would be a so keep in mind, the other thing is I don't want it to do with it. I don't have 36 advertisements on the back, and they change every year.
Right.
But if there are, here's what it would cost to get in this game, we would show the board, because they have to rebuild the whole structure. It's not like you can just pop off those panels and put a new video board, so it's a whole new structure. So, all right, I'll do some digging and then I'll bring it back to the board. It's not gonna be just in the next couple of weeks, and I'll bring it back to the board. So, thank you for the discussion.
Thanks for being
Lawnmower purchase. Is there any?
From signs to lawnmowers. You have any ideas how much a lawnmower costs? You're gonna find out right now.
These also blow snow, so it's not just a lawnmower.
And they're not the kinds that you buy at
Turning gold, is that what
big box stores. You can't get this model there. So yes, our recommendation is to purchase two John Deere 1575T 37 horsepower 4-wheel drive tractors with 72-inch mower decks, 47-inch snow blowers from Greenmark of Jennison at a price not to exceed $89,130. If approved, this will be funded by the 2020 bond proceeds. One of the recommended tractors is going to this campus, and one of them is going to the 5-6 campus. They have, we got cabs on them that are heated, and with the amount of sidewalk that we have in both complexes, it'll be really critical in the winter. And then just to be able to get out and mow the play fields especially at the 5-6 building. We'll use it elsewhere on the campus as well, because we've also got lots of play fields. But the pricing summary down below, Greenmark has given us a great price. We got another John Deere quote from a dealer on the other side of the state. Spartan gave us a quote just on comparable equipment. It's Toro equipment. It's $116,000. And just also to note, the pricing here beats the state My Deal program as well. So that's a recommendation. Other questions I've get in the past, just warranties, depends on the piece. It's 24 to 48 months on these, and it is a very good, we're very happy in 2023 to get this pricing and to have them available. They're holding to for us if it's supported. If they're not purchased by us, they'll be gobbled up by somebody else.
Questions for Mr. Briggs?
Are these gas or diesel?
Diesel?
They are. So the most do we have like a diesel? Well, let me ask you this: the equipment that we use at those facilities now,
Yes.
are they gasoline? Or most of the mix? And do
some-
we have like
Some is we do have some diesel tanks, but a lot of there's the on the road diesel that our buses burn.
Right.
So they got tanks out there.
Okay, so these we'll already have a way to fuel these things at their locations without changing anything else.
Yes.
Cool.
Any questions?
Where's the test drive? Where's the test drive?
Oh yes, they're great.
Summer, not the winter, right?
Great equipment. It'll make us efficient and take great care of our facilities.
So we'll see this at the board meeting?
Yes,
They're not gonna get rid of them before that,
they're holding for us.
Good. All right, Dr. Vanderjagt, look at the process.
Yeah, I think there's supposed to be board appeal process. There was a question that had discussion that the board wanted to have regarding it. Barbie had asked how to kind of tee this up, so there were questions about what it would look like in the future, so I'll turn it over to you.
So we recently had a board ethics appeal process and kind of want to know what went well. We have opportunities for improvement and just to have a discussion in the event that if we were to have another one. Hopefully we don't, but if we do, what went well and are there any opportunities to improve that process?
We have some documents here. I'll be talking about those as well. This is the
No, this is about just board appeal process.
This is just a
Okay,
board.
so I sent that out to the board. If you had questions, to let me know.
Oh, okay,
That was in the.
I'll email you about that, all right?
Yep.
I have something about the process. I did, And the thing that I would like us to look at and consider is during the appeal process, when and I don't even know what we call it, the review committee that's set up with parents and staff. I would like them to just consider the content of the book and the age appropriateness of the book.
I don't want to interrupt, I
Okay.
apologize. This is about the board side of it. So the
Okay.
administrative side of it, we can definitely have that conversation with myself.
Okay.
But I don't want to muddy the water between the board's responsibility in this and the administrative responsibility in
Okay,
this.
because it does tie into what I always.
Does that make sense what I'm?
No, I understand.
It's about, when it gets to the board level, what does that look like?
Yeah.
Prior to the board level, if there are questions, those can come to me and I can, those are administrative responsibilities, not board responsibilities.
Sure. Okay.
I think just from a board perspective, one thing that is confusing, and I've been on other appeal boards for different situations, is coming with a motion already prepared. Typically where I've come from, you hear both sides, you hear the issue, and then someone makes a motion. That motion is approved and there's a second. You don't come with a prepared motion. Then when someone gives that motion, you're kind of done after that, because you've got a motion that's been put forward. You don't have one that's already come prepared. So that's one of the things that I have found kind of confusing, just from a process standpoint.
I was uncomfortable with the optics, with a parent all by themselves, and I understood that she had asked her husband to sit with her, and that was not allowed. That her husband could not sit at the table with her, and then the staff over here. It just looked
It's unbalanced.
unbalanced.
It's unbalanced. Yeah, I would prefer to have one person, you pick one person to present your side.
I thought it was helpful that different people from the committee were there that could share different perspective based on the role of the committee. So I kind of liked having several people there because if there were questions that maybe one person couldn't answer, there were other people that could.
I wouldn't take away any committee members. I think that would have balanced by letting her have her husband there, or maybe the soldier who spoke. I know she talked to him that time.
Who had said that she couldn't have her husband?
That was what I heard. I think I heard that in the record from this.
She didn't ask me, I hadn't heard that she had asked.
I think I know.
Yeah, I think.
But the optics, regardless of how you do it, I just think whole table full of people and one person here. I'd like to have more equal representation so she could have a fairer looking optic there.
Any other thoughts on the process?
I liked how both folks had an opportunity to speak, both kind of groups, if you will, and parties. Had an opportunity to speak and that we could ask questions. I thought that was helpful. I wouldn't change that.
Yeah, I know we're just talking about how the meeting went, and this is not a criticism of the book review policy by any means. I'm a big fan of it, but yeah, I feel like it is worth revisiting the process from beginning to end, so that we're maybe not addressing what happened at the end. Because yeah, the optics weren't great. There's a lot of emotion in the room that night. And I feel like there's several folks that admittedly just maybe weren't familiar with just the process of how the board meeting goes and those types of things. So if we can put our heads together at a certain point and maybe there's things that could be addressed earlier on in the process so we don't get to what happened that night. I think we did as best as we could in the situation. I still look at what I've learned in my short time here on the board is, we have information available to us that is different than what everybody else is available to them. It's part of being on the board. But the meeting we had with legal representation was actually very helpful to me to understand the very narrow path of how we can analyze these decisions. Some of the specific language, so that's where I just want to think we could earlier on in the process would change the end.
And I don't disagree with that. I just want to make sure that we understand that the board's role is the appeal, right? The administrative responsibilities falls on me and our staff. So if there are questions about what could happen earlier, that's what I'd want. Those things are not the board's job. It's my job to make sure that we try to find common ground or the best process to use.
Yeah.
Once it gets to the board, that's a different conversation. So suggestions that you have about what could be part of it, that's what I want to hear from.
Totally.
Not as a board's decision. It's not something that goes to the board. The policy is what the board oversees. And that policy currently states that the board can hear an appeal if it goes through and the process doesn't outline what the process, the steps of the process are there, but the actual process that we follow is administrative guidelines, not board policy.
Totally get that. I don't think we're that far away by any means. I don't have a lungs that all these things need to change. It's just
Yeah, that's why we said we made some adjustments based on the last time. We made adjustments based on the first time. We're getting better. Are we gonna have it? It's gonna be perfect? No. Every book's different. Every there's it looks different if the committee looks at it and feels a different way than it. Sometimes the parents are like, "Yep, I agree with that. We're done." Other times they're not done.
But a fundamental issue on the board is that and the lawyer spoke to this to a certain degree. A fundamental issue is that some on the board view the board's role as reviewing the process. Some on the board view the board's role as reviewing the book, or making a decision on whether the book stays on the shelf or goes. Some on the board view that as, no, our job is to say, was the entirety of the process followed, just like we do with disciplinary hearings. Was the process followed to the appropriate letter by the administrative team? And I think until that issue gets resolved, I don't know if the issue's going to get resolved on this board, quite frankly. Until that issue gets resolved, I think we're going to continue to have some fundamental misalignments on this board. I think that's and I know I'm not trying to convince anybody else on this board that it's just, I have my views, others have a different view, but to me, that's the crux of the topic or the issue.
Yeah, I agree. I think that if we could have decided, I thought maybe we tried to do this, but I thought if we could have decided if we were reviewing the book or reviewing the process that was followed to make a determination, on the committee, I think we could have done better at that.
If you look at the appeal process, the paperwork that your parent has, it says, and I wish I had it in front of me, it says that if you are unhappy with the decision of the book review committee, you may appeal it to the superintendent and then it will go to the board of ed. It says if you are unhappy with the decision is the decision that was made about the book. It's not as, it doesn't say if you are unhappy with the process.
Okay.
So.
But that's the same with an expulsion hearing. If a parent is unhappy with a decision of an expulsion hearing, again, the board gets together and reviews the process that went into the expulsion hearing. So did we follow our policy, state policy? Did we miss anything? Doug, team, make us confident that we may have a suggestion on board, we'd like this kid to go to alternative ed or something, can consider that, but that's not a decision, that's some input for the administrative team. But I hear your point, I respect what you're saying, but I don't see that as a really defining factor. I don't see that verbiage as a defining thing. I still think fundamentally there's this process versus book. And I do think that, and I know you want to not talk about administrative, I do think that some of the proposed changes in the book process, let's go there for just a second, allow for some other options for the board to take back to Barb's point about, okay, we have a couple of approaches now that we can take. Right now, it's keep it on the shelf and getting it. You know, if you take that, in evaluating the books, another option would be beneficial. Again, we don't want to.
Well, and to your point, that process is what we are doing on our end.
Right.
Is that part of the board's options too? I think that's what I was getting at. Is
And
that
that's the
conversation
point
we can have?
And that's the conversation.
When if it gets to the board,
Yeah.
does the board know there are options also?
Yeah.
This, respectfully disagree. I've been a part of more than one expulsion hearing. And I recall never having a discussion about process. It's always about the students. Are you going to uphold the expulsion or not?
Because you're upholding the process that you do the expulsion. With all.
Yeah, since I've been here, they've all been about, we have to legally show you what process we've gone through.
I understand, but do we approve of the decision that was reached through that process? In the case of the books here, if you limit this to the process, then you are actually taking away from the board the responsibility to have control of the curriculum of the district.
I don't agree with that, Mark, at all.
So
In
can
the
I,
case of this, I don't agree with that.
can I throw one thing out there regarding the discipline? The board's job in a discipline hearing, if it gets to the board, is to investigate whether or not the student did something. They don't go through the whole Title IX, they don't go through the whole, they don't interview suspects, they don't go through and talk to any of the people that are involved in that. You simply hear from two parties on what process was followed and what the actions were. So you don't, if I look at the book, if I draw the parallel, and I'm not sure they are parallel, so that's fine, but if we draw the parallel, reading the book would be equivalent to you doing the entire investigation about a discipline and every board member doing the same thing. You don't investigate the crime, if that makes sense. So there's, and I know they're different, but from an appeal standpoint, that was the only parallel the board has. Those are two things that could work for.
Probably not a fair parallel.
Yeah.
I think it is, but you might not think it is.
So I'm again, I don't know that we're going to resolve that tonight. That may just be, but the suggestions of balancing the table, I'm fine with all those suggestions that were brought up. I just think that fundamental issue is going to remain, and we're going to continue to have some of the discussions like we had in the previous one. If appeals continue to come up. So, but the other suggestions that were made, I'm fine with. I align with those. So.
I would encourage everyone to look at your board briefs. I did meet with Dr. Vanderjagt, Amy Taylor, and Nicole Ball last week to try to add some more clarity, I guess, to the process. So please look at it and provide feedback to Dr. Vanderjagt.
So this is not going to be discussed this evening. At any
Those are administrative.
I understand.
Goals, but if you have suggestions, just email them to me and I'll make sure. We met, like we said, I met with Dr. Hooper and Nicole and Amy, and a lot of the suggestions that came out of that meeting, I think we incorporated it into, and we're trying to make the system, from our standpoint, better so that if it gets to the board, you at least have seen what has gone on the backside of it to get there.
Happy to do that.
Next up is board relations, and I also requested that this be on the agenda. Hopefully everyone has had the opportunity to read the SOAR survey comments that were distributed a couple months ago. I believe we have an opportunity to improve our relations with specific groups. In particular, it has to do with teachers based on some of the comments on the survey. So I'd like just to have a discussion of potential ideas of what we could do to improve board relations with individuals that we work with.
I think face-to-face meetings with those who have specific concerns with the board. I've heard, I've heard at board meetings I've listened to 3 teachers who addressed the board with concerns about the board. That certainly is their free speech right. I think I would prefer that those individuals would come to the board members that they had concern about and talk to them about that. Yeah, and I think things could have been probably worked out In fact, probably 95 to 99% of the problems we face in the district would be solved if we would sit down face to face with the people that have concerns. When I hear it said that teachers are upset with the board, I don't know where that comes from, and I don't know why, but I'm happy to talk with anybody at any time. And I think that is the solution, getting the parties that disagree in the same room, talking to each other and getting things worked out. Works in marriages, works in churches, works in businesses, should work in the school district.
Comments?
I think it's hard to make everybody happy all the time, right? So there's gonna be certain groups that don't like the decisions that we make as a board. There's gonna be certain groups that do. It's our job to do what's right for the kids, period, and as long as we keep doing that and do what's in the best interest of the kids. I've said this 5,000 times since I've been here. As long as we keep doing what's right for the kids and what's right for the teachers and people, teaching our children, I think we'll be in a much better place, and it will be a good place. I think that the teachers, and I'm in the halls a lot. And I'm knocking on doors, just checking in on people a lot. I've got kids in the district, it's easier for me to do that than probably for others. And I think there's a number of teachers, specifically, we're talking about teachers, because I think you brought it up. There's a lot of teachers that don't feel like they've got our support. And they have their reasons for them, and some of them are in the notes in the survey, and some you can just hear just by asking the question. So I would encourage those of you who are interested to do that. And there's ways to do that, I think, probably. There's probably good ways to do it and good ways not to. But for me, with my kids that are in, or my kids, it's easy for me just to say, hey, can I stop by and just talk to the principal or talk to the teachers and just see what they're feeling. I've got a lot of good relationships with a lot of good high school teachers, just because it hasn't been that long since I've been a student myself. And just asking for candid feedback is, I think, a valuable thing to do. That's my opinion. But I also understand that there's a lot of different ways to do it, and I'm not sure that we should be overly prescriptive. I think it's just good to bounce ideas around. That's my 2 cents.
We did go through a board, and I hear the discussion, and I acknowledge the discussion around sitting down with the teachers, and now, of course, it has to be a public meeting, so we have to keep that in mind. So we get a whole bunch of teachers out here in the board, and that has to be some sort of facilitated discussion or something. Other than, one of the things I think you're proposing is board members can certainly talk to any principal or teacher at any time about whatever, and just, what do you think, or what's going on here? We're encouraged to be in buildings, and we're encouraged to kind of understand what's going on.
Yeah, just really quick, sorry.
Please. No, please.
I had a lot of questions as an student about the ruler curriculum. When I had questions for individual teachers about the ruler curriculum, I went through the principal. It just seemed like the right thing to do, rather than going directly to the teacher.
Which is, no, great point, and that's also kind of where I was going about there's a way we as a board go about things and a way we don't, and we took a board self-assessment back about a year ago on May of 2022. The point of that self-assessment is it's structured in a way that says, here's what boards do, and here's how you assess yourself, and hopefully bring some topics to the fore that the board can focus on, can work on, and so forth. And there are some topics, again, we're doing this again today, that we had highlighted last year. Some we have made some progress, and others probably are still gaps. So I just say all that to offer, there is a tool out there that can be a facilitated tool by MASB. We've done one a year ago, we could do it again. And it doesn't mean that there can't be dialogue with teachers. You just gotta remember, it's an open meeting, and there has to be a very thoughtfully facilitated activity when you have an open meeting in that regard. And we also remind that obviously no board member can speak on behalf of the entire board. It's only your opinion has one board member, and one community member. Now they have the entire board, so
But that
it's
would
more
be-
about listening than about
Yeah.
responding.
That would be an open meeting if all the board was together, but if we assigned a couple board members to different schools and they could,
That would be a way
they
to,
could have
Yeah.
meetings with the principals, some teachers, because we have had where teachers, I know I've talked to some teachers and they are like, I can't talk to you, I have to have permission before I can talk to you. I'm like, what? Yeah, and they're afraid. So,
I do think it's,
Yeah.
well, back to Andrew's point, I do think it's prudent to start with, I think it's prudent to start personally with the superintendent. Hey, I'm gonna be at South next week, and I'd really like to kind of delve into some of the things that popped up, and I'd just like to understand some things some more. So, Doug, is that okay? Yeah, sure, go to the school. And then the chain of command is, I'd really like to connect with the principal, because it's the principal's building, it's their building. I want to come in, and I think most principals, not all, will go, okay, yeah, that's fine, and I just think you work the chain of command, and then the teachers go, oh, okay, let's talk to the superintendent, talk to the principal, we're on, well, sure, I'd be happy to talk to you. A teacher may say, gosh, I like the principal, I'm just making this up. A teacher may say, I like the principal in the room, or another teacher to, I don't know, but if you work that, as it stipulates in board policy, we work the chain of command. I think that helps to make all parties aligned and more comfortable. But I agree with you, Barb, that, yeah, you can certainly do a non-quorum in buildings.
I'm just looking, when we look
Sure.
at the survey, at the source survey, we need to, I think, do something to make it better.
Yeah, absolutely.
And if we just sit here and go about our business as usual, things might not change. And I think we all agree, we want it to be better. So how can we go about doing that?
I think the comments, the individual, did you guys read all the individual comments? I think there's a lot, if you haven't read them, there's a lot to be gleaned there too, as a starting point for all of us, I think.
So one thing that maybe the board would like to do, and that's completely up to the board, is that data was collected to define and draft our strategic plan. Maybe there's an opportunity for the board to draft some goals, for the board to try to aspire to over the next 3 years or so also. I know in other districts, one that I used to work in, the board had their goals also.
Yeah.
That may include some of those from that data, saying, you know what, to your point, we had to roll up our sleeves and dig into this. But what is your approach? And what does that look like? And it could very well be, you might have outcomes, I'm sure other districts have some ideas. I know MASP has plenty of ideas out there. That might be ways to try to work.
And then we get, and again, I agree with what you're saying, Barb, I'm not disagreeing with you, but then we get definitive about outcomes, we get definitive about our plan, and a plan and a process, and we do it as part of the SOAR. I think that's a.
That's 15 goals. It shouldn't be 15 goals, it could be
30.
I spent about 30 years dealing with conflict and problems and concerns in the vocational situation. And so I've got quite a bit of experience in that regard. And I was reading the things from the SOAR survey. And, I look at the number of people and staff who know me in this district, and I say to myself, where have they come up with this caricature? Where have they come up with this feeling like, because, and it isn't because I asked to talk to people, I've asked to talk to a lot of people, and I've had conversations with Dr. Vanderjack about it. I'm not going to get into any specifics in this room right here. But the fact of the matter is that I would love to talk to as many people as I possibly can. I don't have any, I want to do that. In fact, as I was looking through those comments, and I read a few to my wife, and she said, who is that guy? Or who are those people that you're talking about? And my wife knows me, and she knows my faults, which are huge and many, and she knows my idiosyncrasies, and she knows my, every weakness that I have. And she said, I don't know that person. And I said the same thing to Dr. Vanderjack. Where are these people hearing this information? Okay, I went back over the meetings that we've had here as a group. We may disagree with things, but I can count on one hand in the last 6 months the number of disagreements that became disrespectful. In fact, I could probably count on 2 fingers. Okay, so we don't agree about everything, but for the most part, I feel like people are respectful in this room. And I appreciate that. And I try to be the same way. Okay? And so when I start to read those things about, what the staff and what the teachers are saying, I say to myself, who is that guy? Because he doesn't exist. Okay? I mean, I've got some other faults that they haven't seen yet. Okay? But some of this stuff, and a couple of questions that I've asked to people is, okay, when someone says this to you about me, how do you react to that? Is it a wink and a nod? Is it implicitly reinforcing what they're saying by not commenting? Or is it saying, you know what, I think it would be a good deal if you went to talk to Greg about that? Because I think he would be pleasantly surprised what he's going to have to say about those situations. And so I'm gonna make it a point to get in and talk to as many people as I can, as Ken suggests. I think that's an excellent idea. Because I have no problem doing that. I love to talk to people. And so it's just interesting, some of the comments that I was reading about myself and some of the other people who I've gotten to know pretty well, and I haven't seen that dark side yet.
I will tell you, asking, wanting to meet with people is always different than them wanting to meet with you. And I don't mean you, I mean anybody. So that's always a fine line too. Board members are it's not customary normally for teachers to meet. When I taught for 11 years, I never met with a board member. It was not what we do. There's a line between that communication, not that it doesn't happen. A lot of it is based on having kids in class. A lot of it is a different social circle that you might be in. Maybe it's a church event. Maybe it's a social gathering where you're running into somebody. Maybe your spouse works in the district. So that looks a little bit different. I also don't want to diminish the people that responded to the survey by saying that's not you, or that's not Nick, or that's not Ken, or that's not Ian. I want to respect that people filled that out, and that is their perception. I'm not saying that you agree with their perception, but I can't diminish that data because we have to use what we've received from our community. So if I look at every piece of data and say, oh, they're just wrong, then it didn't make any sense to have people fill out the survey from our staff or students. When they speak, I think we have to respond to what they're saying. I think our job is to maybe change the narrative in the future so that their perception does look different. I will tell you that I've taken my fair share of lumps over the past couple of years. But if you look at the data between the superintendent from 3 years ago to now, the data is pretty consistent between what I've received for feedback, which doesn't mean I don't have to do anything about it, because you still want to improve. But I think to your point about the data of the survey, there's a strong difference between the board's perception 3 years ago and the board's perception now. I just don't want to ignore that. I think that's what President Hooper's saying. Let's not ignore it, but how do we make it so 3 years from now it goes back to where it was?
Yeah,
and not say that people don't know what they're talking about, because that's their perception.
No, well, but the thing is here is that if I have a question about how this caricature has been formulated, I need to talk to people to find out. Okay, and I'm not talking about in an overbearing way or anything like that. I mean, this isn't the first rodeo I've been in, and to say that it's not. I mean, I think we want to know what's driving the narrative. That's what I want to do. Because if I don't know what's driving the narrative, then how can you change it? And so, I mean, I'm not saying that there isn't anything, Dr. Vanderjack, that I could do differently. Just as you and I have had several pointed discussions about different things, and we leave the room maybe not agreeing about everything, but maybe agreeing about half the stuff or some of it until we meet again. And so, you know, but being respectful about trying to get to the core issues that are causing people to give these comments. I'm not saying that they don't believe what they've written, okay? I just need to know what I've done or what anyone's done to give them that opinion. That's all I'm saying. I'm not, and if I wasn't interested in it, I would say, you know what, I really don't care what people say. But I am interested, I want to know. And that's why I'm saying.
I'd really start doing a lot more listening, a lot less talking.
No, sorry.
Sorry, it's not public comment.
We have a lot of work to do. I mean, just look at the surveys, we look at pretty much across the board the last 3 years. Not a lot of areas improved. So, I think it starts with us. As a board, we're the ones that we get to do our job, and most of it on camera all the time. People watch, dissect, how we engage with each other, you know, our body language, how we look at each other. People, I read way too much into that sometimes, but I think I've gained a respect for everybody that sits on here. This is not an easy task to sit up here and do this. How you gentlemen have done this, and Dawn has done this for as long as you have, wow, ton of respect for you. I love the idea of.
It's not always been this way.
And it was a little bit different job maybe.
No, seriously, this board has never behaved, and we've never had this kind of conflict in my umpteen years.
Yeah, I think the world is different.
It's not the world.
The things, the microscope maybe that we're under is different. I love the idea of, as part of SOAR though, looking at what can we do collectively as a board to set the tone. And what can we do with central office? I mean, there's nobody that looks great on those surveys. So, and that's okay. Like, we're the best that the community has to offer right now, for better or worse. So it's up to us to kind of own it. Okay, how are we going to work collaboratively to set the tone for the next 3 years? And as tough as it was to read the surveys and read the comments, at least we kind of know where everybody stands. And I'm confident that we're going to work together to right this ship. But I think it starts with not just how we talk in these meetings, but how we talk outside of these meetings as well. And we all seem to hold ourselves to that standard. But a ton of respect for everybody that sits here. I think we're going to do all right. Just have to, it's not going to be easy. It's going to take some time.
Maybe you can revisit the code of conduct, if that's part of the.
I think that's part of it too.
So you mentioned that.
Barb made a good point. There's been teachers that, I know there's been, even that have reached out to me, like, I don't know if we're allowed to talk right now. That's what we're talking about.
That troubles me. I'm not criticizing you at all here. That just troubles me, and you mentioned something too about it. I'm a small town guy. I know we're a large town now. And any committee person, any board member, any staff, any faculty, pick up the phone and call me. I'm not a mean guy. I'm a nice guy to talk to. But I don't want you judging me on what you heard somebody say about me. You need to talk to me personally. And besides that, I think your idea of getting 2 or 3 board members in the buildings and listening, just listening, and what they have to say, answering their questions. I think we have to get in the same room, face to face, and talk.
We need to be, I think, a little visible. We need to listen to them. What are your concerns? What do we do involved? What opportunities do we have? In getting to know us better. Yes, we go in on Teacher Appreciation Week, and that's wonderful. But I just had too many people tell me they're afraid to talk. I can't talk without permission.
That culture is intolerant. That
And
culture
never
is
as a
intolerant.
teacher, I've never heard that. I've never heard that.
And where I don't want to do a survey because they can track what I say. I know they can't. Yes, they can, Barb, they can track that it's me.
And I don't doubt that you've not heard that either one of you, but you need to respect what they said.
I'm not saying I don't
They
respect
have,
others.
they have.
I believe with that.
So it has been said.
But when you make the comment that the culture of the district has eroded to that
I
point.
did not say that.
Keep in mind that, that's what I'm hearing you say.
No,
But
but
keep in mind that.
Hear what I say.
So say it again, so I'm clear.
I said that kind of a culture is intolerant.
You just said that kind of culture is.
If that's the culture, and I'm not judging that culture, if that's the culture, that's intolerant.
Okay.
Leave it at that, Ken. Don't try to extrapolate.
But you imply that the culture is degraded to that. And my point was, I've never heard a teacher or administrator or a parent, a co-parent, in school, my kid just graduated, so, and I just not heard it. So I don't accept that the culture is degraded. I agree with Nick that the world has changed, and I know you would disagree with that. But social media alone, where all these insinuations fly, fact-based, not fact-based, whatever, that is a change that, we didn't have 10 years ago. And there's so much pro-con and whatever on social media. There are changes. And again, I don't know, but I'll come back to, I agree with Barb's. I appreciate you bringing the topic up. I think it's important to talk about. I like the idea of taking an approach as part of a SOAR plan with some outcomes defined and a plan to get there. And I think the idea of a couple of board members in schools to learn and to listen is to be one part of that plan. I think that's all good stuff, Dr. Cooper, so fully support it.
If anybody ever wants to have a +1, so I'm happy to talk to anybody.
I invited everybody to the grade camp.
Oh, that's right.
That was poo-poo big time.
I didn't want that.
It's overnight, not overnight. I wouldn't push that upon
I
anybody.
attended as well.
Go for the day, get the canoe regatta. We want to do that, because we have like the two of us in the canoe together. I think there's time to listen. There's also time, to Andrew's point, we're in a great spot. Ken's just getting out of where we're just naturally in the buildings, building that relational capital too, not just showing up to listen to whatever, but like intentionally being involved at our assigned buildings, the middle schools and all that. And they love it, the kids love it. We get to go read some, there's one room that day. So, a lot of opportunities to improve.
So we'll look at doing something with strategic plan, something to keep us moving. All right, we're gonna go into closed session, so I need a motion for closed session.
So move.
So moved by Ken, support by Nick, Andrew.
Yes.
Barb, yes. Good.
Yes.
Okay, we are now in closed session.
You guys looking for a classroom?
All right, we'll do a quick board roundtable, and we'll start with Mr. Gillette.
Maybe for summer science on Sunday. So, we're gonna be meeting at like 6:45 for a picture and 7 o'clock. Yep, so 3 weeks. Wish us luck. Say a prayer for us. I hope it's gonna be a good group. So, yeah, I'll be back to
How many kids is you?
25 kids.
25.
Yep.
How many adults?
4. Yep.
No air conditioned bus.
No, Pat like that.
Next year.
He's eating up those, the giant beers, but he's not giving you those.
27 kids, actually. So my now 7-year-old, he turned 7 on Friday.
Oh.
And my 8-year-old as well. So this is our 6th year. And I love it.
Your wife's going to?
Yeah. Yep. So anyway, that's all I got for today.
I just appreciate the work. I know the rest of the team's gone, but toward the alternative education, the thought and the planning and the alternatives and the work that's going in behind that. This again taking us to a new place as a district that we've not had options for in the past, and we've always kind of relied on others to help us out with that. So just really nice work to the team, again pushing us forward as a district. So it's good.
Yeah,
So-
I agree with Ken, that alternative education is a good thing, keep them here and let's help them be successful. Yeah. And Andrew, good luck and safe travels.
Thank you, appreciate it.
I'm good.
Well said.
You had Orion School years ago, I think that did the alternative.
At Granville, they sent kids from Hudsonville to Granville.
Yeah, the three schools combined did build the building, and then we sold it to Granville eventually. And that was always a very moving graduation. I went every year to graduation and see these kids who really got to do these sometimes. So, it's been a good trip.
Thank you.
Take care of that eye.
Yeah, right.
Yes.
Unless when you're done,
Yeah, go ahead.
So, happy birthday to your wife today, too. Thanks. Soccer team, amazing performance on Saturday. First time our girls or boys have ever made it to the state finals. A very tough game. We weren't ahead the whole game, but we were not behind until 2 minutes to go in the game. But very proud of our coaching staff, our kids. It was certainly fun to watch. And the alternative ed is a great graduation. Adult ed is equally as rewarding. So at some point, as we venture down this alternative ed conversation, it could very well lead into a smaller opportunity for adult ed, opportunities for kids that want to come back and get that truly did drop out. And at some point, now you're talking people from really 18 years old to 70 years old. That's also quite a graduation experience. So that's farther down the road, but thanks for giving us the opportunity to explore that.
We had adult ed years and years ago, and it was the governor who came in and said, I don't care if I ever see another grandmother graduate from high school. And did away with it. It was too bad. It's a good program.
All right, I'll take a motion to adjourn. Okay, support from Nick. All in favor say yes?
Yes.
Opposed, same sign. We are adjourned.